Hi, Claudia. Hi, Majd. Hi, Tisha. Hi, Delia. Hi, Dominic. Hi, Samiksha. Hi, David. Tracy. Yay! Got a bunch of folks coming in. Welcome. Welcome to GRE Free Prep Hour. Just give everyone a second to get settled in. So today we are going to communicate primarily using the chat. So I'll say hi to all of you. You'll notice that in the chat, you can chat to all panelists and attendees or just to all panelists. So I'd like everyone to say hello to all panelists and attendees. So you can say hello to each other as well. Yay, you guys got it. Awesome. Yay, welcome. Cool. Hi, Delia. I like the all caps. Hello. And just to say hi, maybe tell us, where are you physically in the world right now? Oh, nice. Good morning in India. Yay. It is evening where I am. I am in New York too. Hi, Julia. Yay. Everyone's so excited tonight. I love it. Cool. Oh my God. Ali, you are amazing. 2 a.m. What a champion. 12 a.m. Oh, so many. Lots of night owls. I work a lot at night, so I definitely get the night owl side, but not so much the morning. Yeah. And then the other thing I would love to know is just, where is everyone at with prepping for the GRE? Like, are you just starting out? Are you near your official test? Are you somewhere along in the process? 4th week, yeah. Cool. Oh yeah, lots of folks getting close to their test dates. You're almost there. Some folks just starting. Cool. Yay. 1st week. Yeah, Rakid, Aaron, Mila, you guys are all just starting out. Yep. Yeah, the GRE will find you no matter where in the world you live. Cool. So has anyone been to a free prep hour before? Yay, David has. Awesome. But for the most part, cool. Caitlin has. Oh, a bunch of people have been before. Nice. So we do 2 of these every month. They are on a different topic every time. It's usually either me or one of my colleagues, Whit, or sometimes Dimitri, teach these. And if you haven't been to one before, but you find it helpful, you can find recordings of all of these on our YouTube channel. And tonight's recording will eventually be on our YouTube channel. So they're on all different kinds of topics. You can go back, dig through, find the topic you're interested in. My topic for tonight is going to be a particular type of logic question. I want to talk about the logic questions that deal with structure. So I think for folks who are kind of further along in your preparation, tonight is going to maybe be nice because we're going to deal with sort of a niche question type. For folks who are newer, I'm hoping this will also serve just as an introduction to what the logic-based reading component of the test is like. And some of the skills that we talk about tonight, you'll be able to transfer to doing other types of logic questions. So I chose this topic because I've been seeing a lot of students recently have sort of issues with this question type, and I want to help them out. Ali, yes, you are definitely welcome to always ask questions in the chat, or there is that Q&A function you can use as well. I'll try to save a little bit of time at the end to do some open Q&A stuff. Maybe the last like 5 or 10 minutes for that, but you can also just throw out questions as we go along, and I'll try to answer them as we go, and then we'll have some time at the end too. Yay. So we're going to just look a little bit at like, what is logic-based reading? How does it fit into the test as a whole? And then we're going to start talking about a process for dealing with these questions. For folks who've been studying these structure questions, they're the ones that like highlight 2 portions of a passage and ask you about the roles those highlighted portions play. So that's what I mean by argument structure. Yay. All right, so for folks who are newer, maybe a recap for folks who've been at this for a while. A verbal section has 20 problems, and you get 30 minutes to do those 20 problems. So we have to move really fast. And in a verbal section, we're going to see essentially 3 different big types of problems. We're going to see some vocab problems called text completion. We're going to see half of our reading comp. We're going to see another type of vocab question called sentence equivalence, and then we'll see our other reading comp. And we can always expect to get things in this order. So tonight we're going to be talking about a subtype of reading comprehension. There are a lot of different tasks within this half of the verbal section that is reading comp. We get a long passage and we get some short passages. And then in those short passages, we get some passages that talk about content, and we get some passages that talk about logic. And it's these logic questions that I want to focus on tonight. They're a bit different from the other types of reading comp. So just to show you what these sort of two sides of reading comp are like. Here on the left, I have a content-based passage. Here on the right, I have a logic passage. I just want to give you a moment, look over these two passages, and then share in the chat, maybe what are some differences that you see here? What's the difference between what we see in this text versus what we see in this text? I'm seeing some really great stuff in the chat. So if you haven't seen what your classmates are chatting, maybe take a look. Yep, we get a strong conclusion from the author. We are definitely going to be using more critical thinking skills here. Yeah, Consola, definitely agree. Like there's more kind of inferences, like gaps to fill in the logic one. And there's something else that was really, yep. And here we just get kind of more facts, neutral stance. Also, this one is shorter. So this is the big contrast between these two tasks. I kind of will sum up these differences. I think you guys have picked up on all of this. The other important thing to know about the difference here is that with a content-based passage, we're going to be getting multiple questions per passage. But with logic, we're only going to get one question on the passage. So as soon as you see a passage that has only one question associated with it, you know you're in the world of logic and argument. I'm curious, focusing on this passage on the right, is this a convincing argument? Like, is it a good argument? Do you read it and feel totally convinced that public officials shouldn't? Nope. Yeah. Why is it bad? Yep, I agree. Not enough evidence, lots of missing pieces. Yeah. We're never going to get good arguments on the GRE. Our task is usually to deal with the ways in which they are not good, with the pieces that are missing. That's going to be at the root of a lot of logic questions. Some, however, are going to be a little bit more neutral. They're going to ask us just to kind of talk a little bit about what the pieces we do have are. So when we're thinking about types of logic questions, there's a whole lot that are going to deal with the fact that these are not good arguments. All of these up here are kind of asking us to show and like, you know, strengthen, weaken, but essentially address the fact that this is not a good argument in some way. The question type we're going to deal with tonight is this one. What are the roles that different components of the argument are playing? These can be unusually tricky, and that's why I want to focus on them. I also want to focus on them because if we understand how to break down an argument effectively, it will help us answer these other questions as well. So some of the critical reading skills that we're using tonight, we are going to be able to sort of apply elsewhere in these questions. So I want to just start talking about that. When we get one of these logic passages, how do we start breaking it down? And to illustrate that, I'm going to give you guys a very simple, just 2-sentence argument. This phone's revenues increased significantly in January. Therefore, the phone must have generated more profit in January as well. When I break down an argument like this, I'm sorting it into 2 different pieces. I want to figure out what is a premise and what is my big conclusion. Premises are the building blocks that lead up to my big conclusion. And they can be facts, which, obviously are things that are certain, kind of evidence. And they can also be claims, which are assertions that are less certain. But any fact or claim that is leading me into that big opinion conclusion that we get, that's going to be a premise. And then the conclusion is going to be the big claim, that big author's opinion that we were seeing in that earlier passage as well. So my job when I am breaking apart an argument, and what I do to this day when I take one of these tests, is I read the argument and I make a short bullet point for each fact. I take a lot of notes in logic. So my notes for something like this might look like this. Like, okay, I have a premise that's a fact, and that's saying revenue increased. And then therefore I have my conclusion, and that's that profit increased. So my notes are very shorthand, very brief, but I am trying to be really precise about identifying what role each statement in the argument is playing. So I want you guys to just try this step, and then we're going to get into using this breaking down to understand an argument. I just want you to read this short argument and take notes on each sentence, identifying along the way what is a premise, what is a conclusion. I'll give you guys a couple minutes to do that. All right, so let's go through this together. We can kind of do it together in the chat. First sentence, premise, is it a fact, claim, premise? What is it? Yeah, we get a fact. It's just an old building. It looked like I wrote fart instead of fact. Old building. Cool. Next sentence. Fact, premise, or conclusion? Ooh, we have a little disagreement about this. Have long considered. It's definitely a premise. It's building up to our conclusion. And I might say like premise here, thought PB Palace, but this premise is going to be wrong. Like as soon as I've seen like have long considered, I know, okay, now I'm going to get a counter. And then I see that, okay, cool. However, is this next sentence a premise or the conclusion? Yeah. Yep. So now I get a premise that counters the previous premise. Counter, no luxury goods. So as I'm taking my notes, I'm also kind of charting how all of these ideas connect. I think that's a super important thing to be doing as you break these down. Okay, I have kind of a background fact. I have a premise that's wrong. I have the proof, the evidence that counters that wrong idea. Yeah, I agree that this statement is a fact. Is that, maybe I'm misunderstanding your question. But I would agree that this is a fact. You know, they've found it. It's definitely what they've found. Yeah, I agree. Premises are facts. Maybe that's the confusion. Like a premise is anything that's building up to a conclusion. Often facts, sometimes claims. I don't know if that was the confusion, if that helps clarify. And then in our last sentence, what do we get in the last sentence? Premise or conclusion? Yeah, fact are premises. I think I'll re-explain that in a second because I think I wasn't clear and I'm glad that you asked that. But yeah, we get our conclusion. Therefore, PB was more likely religious. And now I've broken it down. Yeah, I just want to clarify because I think that's an important point. Premises are all of the building blocks that lead up to the conclusion. And many of them are facts. Some of them are claims. So in charting this out, I get kind of a fact here. I get a claim that's a premise that's wrong. And then I get a fact that's a premise that counters that claim. I am hoping that that is clear because I do think I was not clear the first time. And I think that's important. So I'm really glad that you wanted to clarify that. So as I'm going, I'm charting, okay, what's my conclusion? What's leading up to my conclusion? And then, yeah, it is important. Yay. And then what are these, how are these facts and or claims that are my premises interacting? And this is going to be enormously helpful for structure questions. So it's good that we took some time to clarify that. Anyone not feeling clear? Any questions around this structure, this clarification? All right. So now I want to start applying this to some GRE questions. And we've been, yeah, it is definitely a weak claim. And there will be question types where you're going to be getting exactly into that, Maggie. Yes, that's a great point, Dominic. These kinds of structure words are enormously helpful to look for as you're going through these. However, therefore, anytime you're reading, actually any reading comp, looking for these structural transitional signposts is going to be really useful. That's a great question, Pushkar. A good way to know that something is the conclusion, there's a couple of things you might do. What is the biggest assertion being made? That's a good way to identify the conclusion. Like, what is most uncertain in this passage? That's the question I ask myself to test if something's a conclusion. Conclusions are often usually at the end, sometimes at the beginning. It's very rare that we would get the main conclusion of an argument in the middle. So that can help too. But they aren't always at the end. You do want to keep an eye out for them at the beginning as well. Ooh, people are asking great questions tonight. I love it. So I want to show you the type of question that we're going to be specifically dealing with tonight using this breakdown of what does what in the argument. The most uncertain thing is the conclusion. The conclusion is always like the big wild claim the author is making based on the facts and other premises given. Yeah. Yeah, let's go back. I see we have kind of more questions. So let's go back to our breakdown of this argument. Yeah, I mean, I think that that's true, that the conclusion is not very likely to be true. So here, researchers have found, here they're telling me that they've definitely done this. Like, researchers have found little evidence. So when I see something like this, have found, like, okay, that's definite true, is a fact. When I look at this last sentence, however, it is more likely. This is uncertain. Like, we're talking about more likely, less likely, but we're not saying this definitely happened. Whereas researchers have found they definitely did that. Author's primary concern. So yeah, Mila, those question types you're noting here, you're never going to see those questions being asked about a passage like this. A very short passage with just one question. You're only going to see logic type questions being asked about this. So those primary concern and main idea, you're going to see those with the content passages. The sort of slightly longer passages with multiple questions. And there the text is going to be very different. It's not going to present a strong conclusion. Good. Glad you have your answers. Yes, Dominic, I think that's a really nice nuanced way to sum it up. All right. Good. I'm glad we're taking time to get clear here because it's gonna get trickier in the context of questions. All right. Now let's go to our question. Although if anyone still has other points, let me know. Okay. So this is the type of question we're dealing with tonight. And it's going to give you highlights of two sentences in the passage, and it's going to ask you this. What purpose do these sentences serve? So when you see a short passage like this with a question like this, notice I haven't given you the answer choices yet. It's because I do not want you to look at the answer choices until after you've done some work with the passage. So first, you're going to read the passage. And as you read the passage, you're going to identify the role each component plays. You want to focus especially on the role, the sentences in bold, but you should read the other sentences too, because they're going to play a part here as well. And I want to have a pretty clear idea of what each sentence is doing before I go into my answer choices. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of time to do that, to get really clear on the roles each sentence, each sentence is playing here. We'll talk about that, then we'll go to answers. Let's break this down. First sentence. Is this first sentence a fact or a conclusion or a claim? Yeah, Maggie says it's opinion. Definitely an opinion. Yeah, yep. And Prishkar, you're like 7 steps ahead, but I love it. Yeah, we get a claim in our first sentence, and this is a short-term claim, which is saying we need to sort of restrict borders. You know, we're getting a short-term solution to this problem. What is the second sentence doing here? Fact claim. How does it connect to the first sentence? It's definitely, I think it's a fact. You know, we're saying this is what's going to happen. And how does this fact relate to our first sentence? So our first sentence is saying we need to tighten borders and target major smugglers. Yeah. Yep. And yeah, this fact is supporting our initial claim, because it's saying the alternative to tightening borders would be to get rid of poppy fields, to get rid of sort of where the source material for drugs are produced. So this is an alternative solution won't work, is a bad idea. So we should do this because this fact tells us the other thing is not good. And then what about the last sentence? Fact or claim, how does it fit in with the pieces that have come before? Yeah, this is our conclusion. This is our big claim for sure. And how does it fit in with the pieces that have come before? Our conclusion, we need to rebuild rural infrastructure. You know, we start out with a short-term plan and a fact to support that. And then we end up with what? Yeah. Yep. So we get, here's a short-term solution. Here's a fact to support why this is a good idea. Yeah. And then here we get the long-term, larger solution saying like, okay, and this fact is kind of supporting both of these solutions. So now I have a really clear idea for what I'm looking for in my answers. I have a claim that's a short-term solution, and then I have a claim that's an even bigger, longer-term solution. So once I have that clear in my mind, then and only then, I'm going to go into my answer choices. And to start, I'm usually just going to look at the first half of each answer and see if that works. Just because if I can eliminate based on the first half, I don't need to read as much. Is the first a conclusion drawn by the speaker? Does that work for A? Is the first the conclusion? Yeah, it is not the conclusion. We have other things going on here. Is the first statement a short-term solution to a problem? Yeah, so we'll keep that in. Does the first just present a problem? Nope, get rid of that. Does it present a popular solution to a problem? Yeah, this one's a little tricky. It presents a solution. Yeah, yep. We don't know it's popular. And I think, Dominic, that's a great point. It's subjective. We need to prove our answers. So watch out for subjective judgment if that subjective judgment isn't in the passage. So yeah, we have a solution, but it isn't popular. This is one of the most common traps that people fall into throughout reading, so I'm super glad it came up. It's a great thing to remember. Does the first present an argument? Cool. So now I'm down to 2. Now I only have to read the second half for these 2. So I'm minimizing the text of the answers I have to read. Is the second a long-term solution to the same problem? Yeah, that looks pretty good. Just to double check, does the second present evidence? No, the second is a conclusion. Let's get rid of that. So here, read the passage, identify the role each component plays, eliminate based on first half, then check second half to confirm. And then you're done. The idea here being, if I take time to be very clear on what's happening in the argument before I go to the answers, I can make very quick, confident decisions about my answer choices. If I don't do that and I rush into my answer choices, it's really easy for me to start debating these, for sure. Yeah, I think I agree with that assessment, Kanyansola, of C. I think it's doing more than just presenting a problem. sorry, maybe I'm misunderstanding you. It does present a problem, but it's also presenting a solution to that problem. So saying that it just presents a problem is incomplete. The first is presenting an argument. This is what we should do to fix this. Like, should, argument in the sense of like advancing a debate for something. Yeah, I don't think presents an argument is as good a description of what it's doing as a short-term solution, for sure, but it's kind of feasible to me that it could be true. Other points to clarify, because then we're going to kind of keep making these more difficult as we go on. So I want to make sure we're all kind of solid here before we do one that's a little bit trickier. All right. So we're going to get a trickier one. And here, we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to give you a couple minutes to analyze first. Then we're going to look at the answer choices. Here you go. Oh, yeah. Wait, let's back up because I got a really good question. Yeah. Short-term versus long-term. I think the big clues here, I think the big clue is for the time being. That's, yeah. Yep, Pushkar, you got it. Yeah. That's sort of telling me this is short-term. And then rather saying, okay, additionally different. Yeah, you're welcome. All right, now let's go to our next passage. Here you go. All right, so this one I think is a little bit more complicated. So let's break it down. First sentence gives us what? Factor. Yeah, we just get a fact. What is that fact? Higher premium on cool design. So like, this is like talking about the iPhone. Why does everyone want Apple products? Cool design. Higher premium on cool design. All right. Then what is this? What is this part here in bold? Yeah, this is kind of, this first is kind of background. What is that part here in bold doing? Yeah, yep. We get a fact, and it's introducing a problem. Design innovations are quickly copied. Nice. And then what about the second part of the sentence? Fact, claim, what is it doing? Yeah, then we get a fact. Tech companies charge a lot for new design. And this fact explains this one. So, okay, there's a high premium on cool design. Because people copy designs quickly, people charge a lot for new designs. Next sentence. But the larger profits will give competitors stronger incentives. Yeah. We have a fact. Fact, more profit equals more incentive. Yeah, this counters the previous fact. And I 100% agree that is leading us up to our big conclusion. Best strategy is to charge less. So if I'm just highlighting what the parts in bold are doing, I have a fact that explains the wrong strategy, and then I have a conclusion that presents the better alternative. So now that you have that broken down, check out our answers. I'm going to let you go through the answers on your own, see how it feels. Chat me, just chat to all panelists so you don't sway other people's opinions. Chat me the answer you think is right when you find it. Nice. All right. I'm seeing lots of good stuff. Go ahead, chat me your answer if you haven't yet. Cool. So no one liked A, no one liked C. I want to quickly rule out D for us, and then I want to debate B and E. The first is a consideration to demonstrate that a particular strategy will not apply. But this first statement is telling us why this strategy is used. It's a fact that explains the wrong strategy, explains why the wrong strategy happens. So it's not saying that that strategy doesn't apply. It's actually saying this is why people apply this strategy. So I'm going to rule out D for us. This, I can also look at the second half of it. I'm not sure. The second is a factor cited. The second isn't a factor cited. The second is actually our big conclusion. So let's look at B versus E. So I think if we look just at the first half, a consideration that helps explain the appeal of a certain strategy, yeah, it's explaining why this strategy happens. The first is the factor used to justify a particular strategy. Yeah, it's definitely justifying the strategy. So I think the first half is good. So in making this decision, I'm going to focus on the second part here. What's the, and I'll come back to talking about A for sure. I see that question. What's the difference between these two? Yeah, here, and you guys can go back to chatting to everyone because you're saying really good things and your fellow attendees can't see. But what people are saying is this first says presents a strategy, an alternative strategy that is endorsed. So the first is presenting a big strategy. The second is presenting a factor against. And if we come back to our summary, we're saying, oh yeah, the second is the conclusion that presents the better alternative. So it's not presenting like a small thing, a factor, it's presenting a whole big strategy. So I'm going to eliminate B, and I'm going to get into, I'm going to pick B. B is our right answer, and a lot of us got there. Nice, this one is tricky. As for A, I think my big argument against A, the second provides a consideration to support the argument's recommended position. The second statement is the argument's recommended position. So it's A is a little too narrow for what that second statement is really doing here. Does that help? Because I think the first half of A looks okay. It's the second half of A that doesn't look okay. Yeah. This statement here, like this part here, this is saying, this is the strategy that I recommend overall. This is my big claim for what the strategy is. This is what I think we should do. What the second half of A is saying here is the second provides a consideration, like a small factor, piece of evidence or thought to support the recommended position. So this is essentially saying the second is like a factor building block to reinforce our main position. But the second statement here is in fact the statement of what our main position is. So the second half of A is too narrow. And honestly, I think part of the difficulty with these is the GRE has its own kind of vocabulary that shows up in these questions, and it just sometimes takes time to get familiar with what some of these mean. Like, what is the difference between a consideration to support an alternative strategy endorsed? And as I think you get more familiar with these, you're like, oh yeah, when they say a consideration to support, that means like a factor claim that's a premise supporting my main conclusion versus what is my main conclusion. They're using a lot of different language here to talk about what these components are, but we're still thinking about the same components. Guys are asking great questions. So before we go do another one, and the next one's gonna be a little bit harder, we can keep ratcheting up the difficulty. A really important thing to do as you study is pause after each question. Oh, that's a great question, Kenyon Soul. What's the difference between a factor and a consideration? I don't know that there's a strong one. They're both different ways of saying like a supporting premise. I think a factor is probably more like evidence. A consideration is more like a minor claim, but that's a pretty nitpicky distinction. I think you can get to where you need to be by seeing both as essentially a form of support for a larger point. Yeah. You guys are asking all the right questions. I love it. My colleagues and I once got together and we're like, what are the traits of students who do really well in studying? And asking a lot of critical questions was like one of the traits we saw over and over again in students who had really strong score improvement. So keep asking strong questions. Yeah. An alternative strategy is an alternative to what people currently do. So I got the question, isn't the alternative strategy not endorsed by the original argument? The original argument says this is what people do. And then the last statement says, here's an alternative, and this is what people should do. So when it says endorsed by the argument, it's essentially saying, what does the author think we really should do? Like the argument and the author's stance are kind of used interchangeably here. If that didn't help me, just ask a clarifying question. I'm happy to chat more about that. But our task now is to pull a larger lesson from this question. Like, what is a takeaway that you want to remember that will be helpful as we go into doing a trickier question like this? And share it to everyone in the chat, because I think it might be interesting to see what are the takeaways that other folks have as well in addressing this. Think about what's something, can be something about process, something about keywords, but something where you're like, okay, when I see another question like this, this is what I want to do. Yep. Yeah. And that just like kind of to keep analyzing answer choices to understand sort of GRE terminology. And that'll, I think as you see more of these, you'll be like, oh, that's what they really mean. Yep. Compare choices to determine like what's the difference. Yep, you need the non-highlighted portions to really understand. So you're reading the whole thing and thinking about each part, even though you're ultimately just focusing on what's in bold. Yeah, and bold may be only part of a sentence. That's one of the weird format things. Yeah, I'm glad you like that, Delia. Yeah, break answer choices in half. Just because these answers are so long and so wordy, it just, the less you have to read, the better. Marimar, that's a great point on dealing with the answer choices too. Like rephrase answers in your own words. That's going to help you throughout reading. That's an excellent thing to practice. Awesome. I love it. These are so great. Okay, so we're going to do one more. And I'm just going to give you the whole thing this time. So it's up to you to be rigorous and practice good process. Put your takeaways into action. Here you go. All right. So I got some questions about note taking. So I tried to recreate something like the notes I would take doing this passage on the test. My notes would be a little bit more shorthand, but if I showed you the notes I would actually take, I don't think anyone could understand them. So I am taking a short note on each sentence, and I'm looking for keywords. Almost more than the content of this argument, it's the structure that matters. So first statement, okay, they erroneously believed. So this is a claim that's wrong. Second statement, the acid they claimed. Okay, so this is another wrong claim that's being used to explain the first claim. Third sentence, researchers have recently discovered. Okay, cool. So this is a fact. They have recently discovered a new fact, and this fact counters, however, the previous facts. It also supports my conclusion. So now that I have that framework, I can go through my answers. The first is an assertion the author accepts as true. Nope, not true. Erroneously believed. Accepts as true. Not true. First is an assertion that the author argues against. That so far looks good, so I'll leave that in. The first is evidence that the author believes is no longer valid. Okay, I don't know, maybe I'll leave it in. The first is a claim that the author believes to be invalid. Okay, that looks pretty good. So now let's look at the second half. The second is evidence presented as contrary to the author's argument. Let me get rid of that. The second is additional evidence that the author uses to support his main point. Okay, that looks pretty good. It's a new fact that disproves 1 and 2. The second is the author's main point. I think that last sentence is the author's main point. So I'll get rid of E, and I'm left with D. Notice that I don't love that this says the first is evidence. I kind of think the first is a claim, but it's the least bad of what I have here. So I'm going to go with that. I'm really leaning heavily on process of elimination as I go through these. So who's making what claim? What's a fact? What's a claim? What's true? What's not true? Charting these out, looking for how these pieces connect. All right, we're at the end of our hour. Yeah. Yep, we do 2 of these every month. I do one and my colleague Whitney does another. You can find them all listed. There's like a free resources section on our website. You can also find old ones on YouTube, and there's tons on YouTube. This will be on YouTube eventually. So we sometimes take a little time to upload them because there's just a lot going on these days, but this will be eventually, you will be able to find this recording, and then you can find a lot of old ones there as well. You're also always welcome to come to the first session of a live course for free. I have a session 1 tomorrow night if anyone's free. There's lots of other session 1s happen in different nights. Yay! Oh, yay! I'm glad that you watched those. So thank you guys all for being here tonight. Best of luck with your studies. Hopefully I see you in tomorrow or in another free prep hour down the line. Take care. Stay safe. Yay. I'm glad you guys like word of the day. That was super fun to make. Have a good night. Oh, for the class tomorrow, you can just, if you go to this link, you'll find the signups for the free trials. Yep. Cool. I did actually work a little bit in theater, but my background is in music. So that's kind of where I got my performance training. Awesome. Good night, guys.